The Shoe Project exists to enhance the written and spoken English of women newcomers to Canada. Working with coaches, each member writes a shoe story springing from her own experience and provides the footwear to match. Shoes become a vital symbol for the global and personal journey that is immigration. They conjure not only people and places left behind, but new beginnings, adaptations. The Shoe Project brings these stories of arrival into our national conversation through exhibits, publications, and performances. We foster, amongst women of different origins, the skills to express themselves, along with a sense of sisterhood, so that they, in turn, may help others in their shoes. I'm Katherine Govier for the Shoe Project.
I was packing my luggage for a recent trip to the Caribbean. My red heels were the last item that I had to fit into my suitcase.
When I wore my black shoes with young children in Turkey, we talked to each other through play.
I grabbed my favorite pair of flat sandals from under the bed. Hasteirinhas. They look like Greek sandals, and they are essential for dancing forró.
One of her legs was much shorter than the other. That's why she wore those specially designed black orthopedic shoes.
Every spring festival, Gore's family and friends came to visit us. They always brought fresh pork, specialty oranges, and 3 new pairs of shoe insoles. Sewn by the dexterous hands of those villagers, these insoles were blessing, full of symbolic meaning from longevity to good luck.
At home, there's always a need to identify people, either through their complexion, dialect, family name, attire, or hometown. But flip-flops were found in every household, not belonging to any group. Worn by every Tom, Dick, and Harry, they were universally accepted dress code no one questioned.
She lifted her skirt to show me her feet. Her second-hand sandals had not been able to take all the trips back and forth, and the traps had given out on her way to the curb. The hot pavement burned her feet, so she fastened her sandals with plastic bag she had found on the road. Trailing behind her were small children, shouting, "Crazy woman, crazy woman."
My father owns several pairs of loafers. Black, brown, and tan, they're all the same. Made of leather or leather-like material, with thick rubber soles and sturdy enough to be worn in almost any weather. They slip on and off easily, which is useful for the 5 times a day he stands barefoot on the prayer mat.
Helping her unpack her suitcase, I was surprised to find her burqa. I lifted it out and held it to the light. It was a loose-fitting, head-to-toe shroud made of translucent fabric, but it disguised one of the most oppressed creatures of God, an Afghan woman.
After the revolution of 1979 in Iran, clean-shaven faces for men were out. They were declared to be signs of Western hegemony. Men grew beards. Foreign products vanished. Foreign beauty products vanished from the stores.
With my strong Eastern European accent, I always attract attention. People are curious how Canada is different from Poland and if there is any cultural shock to deal with. Those questions make me wonder. Food and clothing are pretty much the same. Even the weather is very similar. Then it came to me. Garage sales.
Does anyone here dance salsa? Yes, I can see. No, Yes. It's said that a natural ability to dance salsa runs in the blood of Caleños, the people of Cali, Colombia. I grew up as a Caleña in the city called the world capital of salsa dancing.
You can choose your friends, but not your family. The nature of Africa is that everyone is family, and that can be both good and bad. If you're wearing a tight pair of jeans, shorts, or very high heels, 2 or 3 strangers can walk up to you and feel quite free to ask you to change your outfit, simply because you are a child of God.
Get down! Did it get you? My friend was screaming from the driver's seat. I ducked down between the passenger seat and the floor. I couldn't answer. Are you okay? He kept screaming. I could see tears pouring down his pale face. The smell of flesh and burning tires was nauseating. I felt something heavy pouring down my neck. I got shot.
To me, it looked like a prison or a decorated medieval cage. It allowed her to see only a slit of sunlight. She could breathe in a fresh air only through the spaces between its threads.
When I immigrated to Canada 10 years ago from Turkey, I gave up everything, including a 15-year career as a psychologist. I had full benefits, an extensive social network, and professional status that many people would envy. Now, I am desperately trying to regain what I lost when I ventured to this foreign land.
Look, Verka is walking, one of us would say. Let's chase the twister. And so we did. It wasn't a real pursuit though. Because Verka was just unable to run. But as soon as she noticed us little pranksters behind her, she would start to panic and try to move as fast as she possibly could. If she had been able to walk a bit faster, with her body whirling like that, she'd have really looked like a tornado spiraling through our street.
I am an internationally trained psychologist, but I am not allowed to work as a psychologist here. Finally, I ended up volunteering for Pathways, a program for high school students in Lawrence Heights, a Toronto neighborhood with a high crime rate. Sometimes it's called the jungle.
Her struggles began the day she dared to confront the outside world, a world where girls are still commodities to be bartered to settle a family disputes, and a man who kills his wife can receive only a fine.
Here is the thing. Caleños just don't dance salsa. We sweep and mop and clean the house to it. We cook to the music too. We bring the speakers outside so the whole neighbor can hear it.
The first and the only time I took part in garage sales was just 2 days after my arrival in Toronto. My landlady was eager to introduce me to Canadian culture and our neighbors at the same time. She told me she would have a street sale. I had no idea what she was talking about, and when I found out, I was shocked. The woman wanted to sell the junk from her garage on Saturday afternoon when everybody would know and see us doing this shameful activity.
Once, to explain this endless movement, he shrugged and said, Once a Mahajir, always a Mahajir. Muhajir is the Urdu word for immigrant. It is borrowed from Arabic and over the centuries has been used to describe many immigrant groups across the Muslim world.
None of the barefoot doctors who received minimum medical education in the countryside could do anything. My father carried him for miles to a regional hospital so he could get better care. With the proper medicine, Gore recovered, and my dad became a hero to the boy's family and the entire village.
She suffered chronic headaches due to the lack of air. However, sealing herself in this suffocating envelope provided her an image of modesty and anonymity.
As I walked through the dusty streets of Goan Estates in Lagos, Nigeria, the rhythm of my old pair of flip-flops sounded exactly like its name. Flip, flop, flip, flop. This sound was comforting. It reminded me of the shoe's convenience. And more importantly, the ability to wear something without fear of being judged.
In 2000, I decided to emigrate to Canada. A new start and new dreams. It wasn't even difficult to leave, except for that moment at the gate when I took a last look at my parents.
As a 14-year-old living in Pakistan, I very proudly identified myself as a Muhajir, which was strange because I was born in Pakistan and enjoyed full rights of citizenship. But in this case, the word Muhajir had little to do with legal status. Like many young people of my generation, I had been persuaded by divisive politicians to use it to refer to my ethnicity. Over time, I realized the absurdity of this. There is nothing wrong with being an immigrant, but in Pakistan, I simply was not one.
When I finally found the source of the scent on the bottom rack of the men's section in the drugstore, I grabbed the bottle and read the name of it. Old Spice. Yes, Old Spice, the name that disappeared after the revolution of 1979. I felt as if Grandpa jumped out and stood next to my very Canadian shopping basket.
My countrymen love to show off, to brag about themselves. If you are not rich, you have to pretend you are, otherwise you are not respected. The book is always judged by its cover.
Since I came to Canada, my style has changed. When I go shopping now, I gravitate towards straight-cut mini skirts and sexy high-heeled shoes. What is going on?
Once I felt the magnitude of freely put on my shoes to wander and explore my city, I could no longer live behind walls and gates. What made me leave my hometown doesn't matter. It's what I found here that does.
For my first 4 years in Canada, I had the status of landed immigrant, which, once again, is not a bad thing at all. But I will admit to feeling a certain sense of relief when I took the oath of citizenship.
When my feet touched the cross-structured insoles, they got massaged and protected.
My mother won the case, but life became more treacherous for the whole family. For our safety, we were compelled to flee our country. I arrived first 4 years ago. Now, my mother, father, and siblings are here.
Everything happened really fast. The dream of journalism changed. It became something different. When I found a new career in communications, I also became pregnant with my first child. And then I married.
I heard she passed away recently. Just like the recluse that she was. All alone in her little tiny house.
When I spoke to these Canadian teens, I often felt frustration of these 3-year-old kids, full of things to say, but not enough words to say them.
Maybe all the changes in my outer appearance are a kind of compensation for what I lost by immigrating to this country.
Here, I finally got my very first pair of flamenco shoes. Here, I finally get to learn the art and soul of flamenco dance.
¿Por qué se están secando sus madroñeras? Ay, ole, morena, su madroñera.
I wonder if she had these ugly black orthopedic shoes when lying in a coffin. Does she need them wherever she is now? I hope she doesn't. Or maybe she got a pair of snow white wings instead. And I pray that they're perfectly symmetric and that there is no one there to treat her the way we used to.
One day, I noticed an announcement about an upcoming street sale. It seems almost a social obligation to take part in these events. Of all the neighbors, only one Russian family and I did not participate. I still need time to adapt to this new Canadian custom.
Although the villagers didn't see me from year to year, they somewhat managed to visualize my growth. And the insoles always fit my new size.
During my recent Caribbean vacation, I wore my high-heeled shoes every evening at the resort. And sometimes I wore them with my shorts at lunch. Simply being admired by the other tourists made me unusually happy.
It was time for me to grow up. I knew then if I was ever to help these teens to shed their shells, I first had to shed my own and speak up without fear.
Standing in our two-bedroom apartment in Toronto, I asked my mother why she brought this burqa. Through tears, she explained that during those days in court, it had actually become her companion, a symbol of her harsh life in Afghanistan, a symbol of her defiant struggle, and a witness to her harsh life in Afghanistan.
During all these years that Iran rushed to dispose of all things old to establish a brand new world free of the baggage of the past, the rest of the world has kept them using, renovating, and reworking. The revolution was like getting off the time train and leaving all the stuff behind on it. Getting back on the train, you realize nobody really threw away things that still work.
I like to stand on solid ground and firmly belong to the place where I live. Because there must come a time when you stop being an immigrant and start to grow roots. I never want to lose my connection to where I came from, but now this is home.
I felt secure, I fell in love, not only with my future husband, but with the city of Toronto, and especially with being able to dance through safer streets. This city, this freedom, should never be taken for granted.
Yes, In Nigeria, there's always a need to identify people, either through their language, their clothes, their food, or the tribal marks on their faces. But perhaps the equality we share in an ordinary pair of flip-flops can someday translate into something as big as our national dictum. Peace and unity, strength and progress, all of which cease to exist, except of course in a familiar pair of shoes. Thank you.